Isn't it mad how that can affect you so much? That's why if you're not tough and you've not been used to being punched in the mouth, you could almost get too much success too early, and then when you get a bit of friction, you crumble. There are times, don't get me wrong, where there is so much, and then I'd think, I don't particularly want to do this webinar right now, and I will have that thought. But then the other thought will be, they look up to me, I have a responsibility, and it's unacceptable for me to not give my everything.
How would you say you see the future for this entire vision? What is it to you? Like, when you're on your deathbed and you've not got long left and you're looking back at your life, what would you say that you've done, and how would you look back on that? Right, so after 7 hours of driving, I've come here to, of course, ask you a set of questions, because you've taught me from a very long time ago that the quality of your questions determines the way in which you progress, of course, as a trader and in life as well. So again, I've got a set of questions to ask you from bottom to top, from when you started up until now and how you actually managed to progress in the way that you did. I'm going to start with what actually bred a entrepreneurial mindset into from a young age. What was that? Was that cultivated, or what was it?
It was a series of circumstances. So the entrepreneurial side, I think, came from, firstly, the environment of not having much. So when you grow up in places where you don't have much money, or you're not getting money from parents, and that's not normal, you have to think about, you still have the same desires that any kid would want to have, right? You want that new skateboard, or you want some Pokemon cards at the time, or you realize and recognize, I don't have the funds ready available to just go out and just buy the things that I want. So you understand that you go without. It is what it is. And I think that definitely was a big part in my childhood. So I would try and create things. I mean, 12 years old, had two paper rounds at one point, and then I would still get to school really early to play basketball before people, even though it was an hour and a half on the bus to get there, I would still be there early. So I'm doing my paper round at 5:20 in the morning. It's really cold, dark. And these things, they play such a huge role. You don't realize at the time. I thought that was normal, but I think it was that.
What would you say that allowed you to believe that as a normality? Was it your surroundings, or was it the way that your parents brought you up, or what particularly was it, your brothers, sisters?
I think observation was a big thing. So I really fully believe this. This is actually something I only realized like a week ago. I started reflecting. I'm always asking myself, and I think everyone should do this, why am I the way that I am? And I've asked that over the years to just try and figure out, why do I respond the way that I do? And that could be emotional. And I just want to realize, right, does it come from a place that's actually healthy, or does it not? And I started thinking, why am I ultrally observant? Do you know where it actually came from? It was in a trading session when someone asked me, how did you remember that? I was like, how could you possibly remember that? And I realized I only remembered it because I observed it, but I became ultra observant. So on the charts, that's helped me out tremendously to spot patterns, for example, and spot reoccurring themes. But I didn't realize, where does that actually come from though? What taught me to be observant? And then I thought back and I thought, right, when my dad had his accident, my mum gave up her whole life to look after him, so he had all the attention, as you can imagine. And then my sister's like 7, 8 years older than me, brother's 9 years older than me. The relationships were great, was very family orientated, but there was almost so much attention. My sister would help my mum out and things like that. So it was almost like me on my own, and then my brother, a little bit older, doing his own thing. And because he didn't have the role model, the guidance to just be told, do this or don't do that, he kind of just took it upon himself to just get on with his own things. He had his own friends, he would go out, and I would observe certain things, like he would just walk out the door and just go out. Not with any like malice or malicious, because you know, he was the kind of person who stepped up. He had like 4 jobs working to help the family, right? And again, I observed that, but I was so young to understand what was going on. I could only observe. So then when I would see my mum's reaction sometimes, she would ask me, like, where's he gone? And I was like, I don't know. And then I would see her reaction of disappointment, worry, confusion. So I'd recognize, oh, that's not right. But I was so young, I still didn't really understand. And I think what it done is it heightened my senses of just observing. So I would look at things more, I would analyze more. I think it made me a bit more street smart, if that makes sense.
And would you say that that sense of isolation that you might have felt led you into the whole, not fending for yourself, but doing something like entrepreneurial, so by yourself, was a correlation factor to that eventually led you into trading?
Definitely, definitely, because I realized that no one is coming to help me.
Yeah.
Because you're just by yourself. I'll give you a very simple example. If I was, I don't know, playing with something and it broke, who would you normally ask? You, like, as a kid, you're a young kid, you might cry a little bit, whine, you'd ask your mum and dad, oh, it's broken, it's not fixed.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think and sit there and go, no, I'm going to give this a go first. You wouldn't rationally have those thoughts. I'm going to fix this before I go to mum and dad. You just go, it's broken.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't have that option. So simple things like that, and I'm only realizing this now, what I used to do is try and fix things for myself.
Yeah.
So it's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all of those years, I'm always seeing a simple toy that's broken. I remember it was a pirate game where do you remember it was like a pop-up pirate where you stick the knives in the barrel and it pops out. I remember that would break all the time. I'd fix it myself. Who would I ask? No one was around. Brothers was out, sisters helped my mum, mum's helped my dad, and I'm just by myself. So a lot of solitude. Just thinking back, lots of solitude.
Would you say that bred a lot of creative thinking as well for you? Solitude does that for people.
I think it built a lot of mental strength as well. It made me very comfortable just in my own skin, comfortable being by myself, comfortable in your own company. I think that should be something that people should do every single day. Most people don't even have 15 seconds of silence, let alone 15 minutes is what they actually need to just not think about anything. And you could call it meditation, call it whatever you want, but I just mean silence.
Yeah.
If you look at the toughest people in the world, what do they all have in common? They're very comfortable just being on their own. If you look at monks that can regulate their emotions very, very well, they can be still for hours and hours and not even move. There is a skill within that. And I think I was doing it not intentionally, it was just, I had no option. So I think, environment influenced that.
Speaking of environment, funnily enough, you obviously grew up in Syria pre-war, right? So the environment was completely different, but what was it about that environment that you say that was actually the shaping part of your character growing up, particularly?
Observation again, so I'll bring it back to that.
Yeah.
I'm in a night and day difference at this point, going back and forth, and you're seeing some really tough scenarios. So of course it wasn't when there was a lot of war there. However, you would still see poverty. You would still see people struggling, like really, really badly struggling. And I would observe. So I think at that point, I didn't know any other thing but to observe. And I don't mean a simple observation, you cross the road, you look left and look right. Most people I see, and it's a simple thing like going into a car park and they go into the store, for example. They'll just get out of the car and just not know what's going on. They're not street smart, they're not aware that it could be attacked. And I don't mean it from like a paranoid point of view, just not switched on. There's no peripheral vision going on. So what I learned very early on was that environment at home, I have to observe, I have to know what's going on, I have to help, I have to be aware of certain things. So then when I was in that environment where it can be really bad, I mean, like, people get kidnapped and shit, like it's not a joke. So you have to be switched on, aware of your surroundings. So when you go into these different countries, I know this happens everywhere, and I don't want to digress into that topic, but you get my point. When you know that happens and it's more frequent that this type of stuff goes on, you're a bit more switched on and more aware of what's going on.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you say that, because as we were speaking about before, that a lot of people, especially in today's day and age, grow up in quite a privileged upbringing, and they find it very, very difficult to actually find the anchor point behind their purpose in life. And obviously, growing up in a different part of the world, you see different things, and not necessarily everyone has the faculty to travel initially, but what would you say to anybody watching this, younger people or even older people, in terms of finding their passion? Is it traveling and seeing the world? Is it seeing poverty? Because poverty is quite subjective in a sense, where it could be different here compared to somewhere else. What would you say people do to find their bearings in their life on the way up?
Well, one thing that helped me, so this may help give a bit of perspective, is that when I've told this story before, but maybe not enough, I saw the man selling corn with no legs on a skateboard. Like I remember saying to my uncle, I was like, why is he doing that? And he's got like corn attached to it and he's selling it and he's happy. And I remember I remember the fingerless gloves, right? Just like really scraggly, not much going on, really happy. And I did see a good environment, people would help each other. So if anyone was homeless, they would just go into the shop and just buy them like a cheese toastie, for example. That would be normal, like no one would be in a bad situation. So no one would feel sorry for him and say, oh, that's really bad. I remember I would say that naturally, it's an instinct. As a kid, you see someone in that situation, you're like, wow, that's so bad.
Yeah.
And then my uncles taught me, it was like, no, don't feel sympathy for him. He's a man. I was like, he's a warrior. Most people would crumble and do nothing. He's out there still fending for his kids.
Yeah.
You know, so when you see stuff like that, I always use that as an anchor point of first world problems BS.
Yeah.
That's just bullshit. When I think about anything, and we can all complain, even myself, right? Just because I've made success doesn't mean I don't have problems, doesn't mean I don't have stress. Of course I do. However, if I ever find myself in a moment where it's just too much, or I find myself going into a complaining moment, which we can all get into, I use that as a bit of an anchor. I was like, remind yourself what you think is a problem, what is actually a problem is a completely different thing. So I can always use that as like an image, thinking, what? That is crazy. But he's still getting on with it, still waking up every day, selling the corn, just getting on with it, just to provide for his family.
Yeah.
And you've got people that are upset because they didn't pass the funding assessment the first time round.
Exactly.
You know, that's insane. Yeah. Perspective has to change.
And even on that, right, like you see people, of course, everyone's got struggle to a different degree. So it's subjective again. Someone might find that the Wi-Fi slow is their parameter or boundary of struggle.
Of course.
But they can only stretch themselves so far. So if you could go back, and obviously you mentioned before that you can only remember certain key moments on your way up, for obvious reasons, right? What were your most traumatic, emotionally or financially, moments that would you say that they completely shaped your character on the way up?
One key one was when, I say the name anyway, MF Global, right? When MF Global went under, that was a key moment. So imagine this, and I'll paint a picture. You've built up a capital, you feel on top of the world, you've taken small funds, you've got roughly about 10K in there, and I feel invincible. I'm still young, it's very early on in my trading career, right? I'm like 19 and a half, roughly around then, so many years ago. And then I remember getting the phone call from my brother and saying, have you logged in? And I was like, logged into what? And it was on the news, and I was going into liquidation. And they're massive. And I was thinking, what's going on? I'm trying to log in, of course, I can't get in. Imagine what that feels like emotionally. I've built up an image, I've got an attachment to that image that I have now cracked it. Not realizing there and then, I'd probably made something like 700 or 800% flukily, not sticking to risk correctly. So it wasn't something I would brag about, but technically I've made a decent amount of percentage.
Yeah.
So by that theory, I'm thinking, well, I can take this 10 to now 50, then I'll take it to 100. You know, you start painting these images in your mind as to where you think you'll go. So that was so painful because I just thought everything I'd worked through, all of the hours, all of the time that was put in, it was just taken from me. And I'm just back to square one. Remember, I'm not in a position where I've just got readily available funds everywhere. Yeah. So that's almost my everything at that point. I've invested 5K at this point, I've been made redundant. Those are my savings. I've put that into trading course, right? The 2-day course, the manuals behind you, as you saw earlier. Yeah. Right, so I've put everything into that. I've invested into coaching, which at that time I think it was £800 an hour. Mm-hmm. That's 15 years ago, £800 an hour. Right, and I invested in it. It was a half-hour session, right? So £400 per 30-minute session. And I remember that thinking, most people wouldn't do that. Not with pretty much all of their savings. Where when I say you have to be serious, that's what I mean about that. I was serious. So imagine all that investment's gone. I've then done well, even though that it wasn't correct. I've built the money up, and it was almost a way of the universe punishing me for doing it the wrong way. How long, you know, that I built the money up. It was like, you're not meant to have this.
Yeah. How long have you been trading at this point as well, by the way?
I'd been trading a year and a half, roughly.
A year and a half. And did it take you a while to build up the savings?
With the money that I invested in? Yeah. Oh yeah, that took years. So that was
straight into it.
This was a combination of like old like paper round money and stuff like that. Now, this is like a lot of money that I'd put away. Yeah. Remember, when you're taught that we don't have everything. So when I started making money and I just had little amounts of money, like £200, that didn't get spent on sweets or new trainers. Yeah. I wasn't taught that way. It was, we have enough, this is what it is, and now you build that money up for something. So I was more excited about building that up. So parts of that is like old childhood money. So there's a lot of emotion invested into that as well. I would be sitting there thinking about that, even though it might not have been that slice of it, I'd be thinking about times when I'd wake up at 5:20 in the morning and go to a paper round, and I might have made £14 that month, you know, but that was invested for my future. So yeah.
It's very interesting that you say that, because people listening to that might think, well, maybe you were just a special kind to think that way or whatever it might be, even though you explained what you've explained. But based off of that, would you say that everybody's got the mental faculty to actually, or mental plasticity, if you like, to become a great trader? Or do you reckon that's something that environment solely affects? Or is it the individual themselves? Which one is it?
I think there's certain aspects in life in which that not everyone is wired to do. I mean, not everyone is built algorithmically. Not everyone is built with an engineering brain. Yes, of course, you could say, well, I'm sure anyone can learn that. Someone that is overly creative and doesn't use too much of their logical mind probably wouldn't make an incredible engineer, you know, and that's fine. But with trading, it is a combination of anyone can learn to be a trader because no one is born a trader. That's the good news about it, where you have certain types of brains that are better suited for certain industries, like engineering, for example. You could say, right, that's a great mind for an engineer. Where I wouldn't look at trading and go, oh, that's a great mind for a trader, is because this is a trait-driven business. You almost take someone with a fresh slate and then you mold in the traits that need to be in there. It's not, I could see someone that, yeah, they're a born trader. I don't think these people exist. They've had to cultivate, they've had to learn that over a period of time. They've had to learn off of good people to recognize what the right things are to do. So I think most people look at it and think, oh, is there some type of people that might find it a little bit easier? I think that's just circumstance, because anyone who's got a great attitude has the best chance to succeed. It's not because their IQ is this amount. It's not because they can learn quicker than someone else. Because guess what? There are people that can learn very fast, learn faster than someone else, but take longer to succeed than someone else. So it's got nothing to do with that. It's all about everything else in trading that actually matters.
Define great attitude.
The way that you respond to failure, the way that you respond to feedback, your ability to just get on with it, not overthink, lack of complaining, that's a big part. How you respond to just any kind of situation. So let's say you can tell a lot about a trader by just asking them questions about their trading, just simple ones. Say, for example, you say, oh, how long have you been trading? Oh, I've been trading like a year. Oh, it's taken a bit of time, hasn't it? And then you just see the responses to that. That would tell me everything, right? That would lead that question. If I was to say, oh, that's a whole year, it's been quite a while. And if I say, yeah, it's been ages, I know that person has a lack of perspective. Because I've said that on purpose. You know, you can just tell a lot about someone's attitude. Where someone who's got a great attitude would just say, well, I've improved, I've progressed, I'm going to keep going until I succeed. Like, you can just tell in their language. So attitude is just how they respond to situations, normally just their outlook on everything. They're normally the type of people that no matter what, they will succeed. And they tell themselves that. They don't put these crazy time frames on, it's got to happen in 3 years, otherwise I'm going to plan B. They just commit and go, I am making this happen. I don't care if it takes me 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. I've done the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, funny enough, first starting to trading, it was a 2-day course. I did say to my brother, day 7, I've cracked it. And I had no understanding as to what the trading world was at all. But I genuinely thought, and this is a good topic to just kind of brush up on, I understand why people are the way that they are in this industry. I understand their perspective. I understand why people jump from system to system. I understand why people are disappointed 6 months in. Because for a moment, I was one of them as well. I was in that position where I genuinely was a little bit upset that day 7 I hadn't succeeded. Not from a perspective of I thought I was going to get rich quick. I just thought I would just have got it by then. So I thought that this 2-day setup was this information, I must know it, therefore I must be able to apply it. And how misguided was I?
Set timelines, not deadlines, like you always say. And would you say on that as well that the best measurement for people, based on what you said, is measuring their response to situations that they responded to negatively before, as opposed to measuring, especially early on in their journey, pointless things like percentage return? What's your comment on that?
I'm more interested in just how they track it as to what you just said. So are they even aware of it? One thing that sounds logical to someone, but how do they actually implement that? How do they track that? Do they measure how much they stick to their trading plan? Do they measure what their emotional state's like when they're taking trades so they can see recurring themes and patterns? So it just goes back to journaling correctly. Otherwise, how would you know? You can't just work from you can't just work from your mind. You have to work from document. And I got taught that by a mentor years ago, and that resonated with me so much, because you can deceive yourself very easily. And when you work from an actual document and see, hold on a minute, I've made the same mistake again. How would you know? Because you would think you'll be surprised if you comment on someone's trade like 6 months from now. If they hadn't journaled it, they'll keep making the same mistake, and you don't realize you're doing it. It's these subtle little things in the moment that cause you to make impulsive decisions that you just get in too early. And it's the same thing again, and you almost know you're making a mistake, but you can't regulate your emotions enough or have the self-awareness enough to then go, I shouldn't do that then. That's me making that mistake again. And the reason why you can't do that is because you've not worked from document, you've not printed it out, you've not got it on a Evernote or on a Notion, so you can see, right, how do I mitigate against doing this? Does this now mean that my trading plan's not clear enough? Therefore, I keep making the same mistake. So again, trading plan, journal, simple things. I'm more interested to your question, how do they track all of that is actually going to be implementable?
Well, we're going to have that soon, aren't we?
Indeed.
And that critical thinking that you just mentioned, and critical and practical thinking, you've obviously mentioned before that you grew up in not grew up, but you were cultivating a broker environment, right?
Yes.
What particular traits would you say that you inhibited and that were instilled into you in that environment particularly? Was critical thinking one of them?
It definitely was. The thing I picked up straight away first was self-talk. It wasn't something that I really was aware of that much. So I remember being explained to the first time, how you talk to yourself is a big factor. That's what they would look at. They would look at how does someone speak to themselves on a daily basis determines their success. It was that important. From things like how are you, outlook on life, what you're having for lunch. Literally, all they would look at is your response to all of those. Response to negative things, response to when you think something's going to go right and then it doesn't go right, how do you respond to that? What's your body language like in those moments? It was amazing. I've never been in that environment before in my entire life. And something instinctively inside of me, intuitively, if you like, just said, I get it. Like, I didn't understand it, but I just got it straight away. So there was no friction to it. I was very moldable. And I just realized, right, I get this. This makes so much sense as to how you talk to yourself is a huge factor.
And what was the etiquette of that environment as well? Like how was things constructed in there if you were late or anything like that?
Well, groomed, smart,
yeah,
tie, all the way up, pocket square, just everything, right? And I don't mean the Wolf of Wall Street, if the images that everyone's getting right now, but it was just shoes had to be polished. Right, you'd get kicked out if your shoes weren't polished. Simple thing that no one would dare be turning up with dodgy shoes. Honestly, it wouldn't happen. You'd get sent home, and it was strict like that. And I remember seeing it like a revolving door. Just people couldn't hack it. No discipline, no consistency. And I think a lot of people self-sabotaged doing certain things that they know that would almost get them pushed out, if you like. And I always found that very interesting. So self-talk, looking well, dressing well, eating well. You wouldn't have someone sitting there with packets of Disco crisps, if you like, on their lunch break. You'd have people reading books.
Yeah.
It was just a completely different type of environment.
And would you say that environment would actually work well in trading? And would you want to instill something similar like that in the ecosystem of Falcon at some point? Definitely.
Of course, when you're right there and you're present with the people, it's a lot easier. So what would happen is that we would always be early, and I'm talking like an hour, sometimes an hour and a half early, which could seem quite excessive for people. And you've got other people out there, and this is why information is really important, telling people get in as late as possible, turn up right on time and then be the first one out because you're just a number in a cog or something like that, which is the shittest attitude you could ever adopt. And you should not be listening to these type of morons because they're instilling lack of work ethic, where what I built is the opposite of that, which is incredible work ethic, because I would be there an hour and a half early, sometimes 2 hours at some point, and I would stay late. I'd be getting home at 10, 11 o'clock at night, but I'd be waking up at 5 a.m. That mentality I can attribute to all of my success. And you know why? Because Friday, Saturday night, what am I doing? I'm in here 15 hours in total, sometimes more, because the prep work that goes into it. So my work ethic has been carried on since then till now. It's the reason why I still do what I'm doing, because I learned there is that you cannot get complacent just because you think you've made it. So the people that were making the most money were there the earliest. They're the ones that could easily slack off. They could get there a little bit late, but they don't. Why? Is because they understand what got them there in the first place. So that mentality rubbed off on me. I would notice how people would treat people that were late as well, because it was just like, you just don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
And no one that was going places, that had their goals written down, that were ambitious, would want to surround themselves with those people.
obviously you instill that quality into the students as well, right? And that's very, very, very evident, of course. There's different people who take your advice in one way, some people who've took it in the past and they've just done something else with it. But the people who've actually listened, as we've seen recently, have actually leveled up their trading a lot more. And again, in that environment, like you said, you know, it can work fantastically in terms of a trader and his mindset and those kind of things. But I wanted to ask you as well, leading on from that, when you got to a point in your trading, because you managed investor capital, right? The prop firms weren't really a thing back then, if they even existed. When you did get to the level that you wanted to, what was your state of mind like throughout that process? How did you view yourself when you looked at yourself in the mirror? And do you think that had a massive effect as well?
Definitely. I've always had a very strong self-image, but I didn't even know what self-image was. So it's not like I was consciously aware of, I need to make sure that I have high self-esteem. This was not a normal, I just had it because of the environment I was in. And I would tell myself regularly all the time that I would look out the window and go, nah, this is not our life. It was linked to my why. I was too clear on my why to have low self-esteem. So when I would look at things like, right, this is the environment we're in. We're living in a terrible house. This is the situation. Mum's devoted her life to my dad. I'm not living like this forever. So I couldn't even listen to the negative voice because it was just, we're not going to live here forever. It's just not happening. I'm going to find a way for us to have a lovely life. And I'll be able to look back and say to my mum, and I would tell her all the time, I was like, right, I'm going to build you your dream home. I'm going to do this. So what I was doing is I was blocking out all of the negative self-talk that most people just have, these day-to-day thoughts, because they were just filled with positive thoughts. They were filled with positive vibration, positive outlooks. So my self-image was always very strong. And I didn't have these long periods of doubting myself. Can I be a six-figure trader? Can I be a seven-figure trader? I didn't have that. I was very comfortable with the idea of money. And I think one of the big reasons why I would visualize it so intensely. So when I even got 100K, I had 100K 5 years before that. Like it was that clear. So when I got it, it didn't feel overwhelming. And I think this is a thing people don't do enough. Even this house, these grounds, everything, 30 minutes after, I'm comfortable with it. It's like I had it for 30 years. And it's only because it's been so present in my mind, this image, this vision, it was just so clear.
And that you've done it now, is the feeling even describable?
It's it's not as exciting, and I mean this in a really strong way, it's not as exciting as what you would think. So you know when you get to a stage where you're making a lot more money in trading for the first time, and you think the emotions are going to be a lot higher than what they are, right? When you make 10K, 20K, 30K, so on, and you think it's going to feel a certain way, and then it doesn't. It's a little bit like that, and it just reminds me of it's the journey, it's the process. And I've done this many of times where it could just be something like a room, right? You've seen the front room, which is the room that never gets used. I remember the process of doing that room. We absolutely loved it. But it was the process of doing the room. Once it was finished, I haven't not been in there in 6 months. So you realize it's all the excitement of the journey. It's never the end destination. So get in the house, get in the grounds, all of that stuff. It was like, yeah, I knew this would happen. Not in an arrogant way, in a way that it's happened. Yeah. And I think the feelings would come after. So like 6 months in, I would sit there and I would be sitting by the pool, just reflecting and thinking, I've done it. You know, I'd have those moments of just, it's actually true. Or I would peer over while I'm on the court, like playing basketball, for example, and I'm just relaxing, just shooting a few hoops. I'll look over and my mum's just like swanning around, going back and forth, you know, doing like washing, for example. Yeah. And I was thinking, we never used to live like this. It's more moments like that.
Must be a very, very secure feeling as well, because obviously you lived quite far apart before.
Of course.
And so if, God forbid, anything happened to your dad, you had to, you know, spend the time traveling the distance to make it to him. Now he's around the corner.
3 a.m. phone calls.
Yeah.
You know, like when people say, when you wake up in the morning, I don't look at my phone for the first hour. That used to give me anxiety when people say that, because I understand why. But I was thinking, you've not been in my environment, so that does not exist for me. You know, me putting my phone on airplane mode, not an option. Me turning my phone off doesn't exist. That's so reckless. When I've been in situations of 7 missed calls, and then I'm not thinking, what the fuck has just happened? And then I'm ringing back and I've got to call the ambulance, and you know, I've done it my whole entire life. So as you can imagine, environment, I understand why people do it, and I would love to be able to do that. However, it's just not an option for me because I have a responsibility, and I can't be so reckless in thinking, yeah, but that's my time and I don't want to be distracted. Put my dad's life on the line, you know. So it's different sort of things like that. So yeah, very secure feeling knowing that I'm right there. And even then, things of course happen, and you have to be on hand. But I think that is the best feeling as all. Right, it's all contained, all in the grounds. You know, I can just pop over regularly, make sure they're okay, make sure he's got his medication, and just take care of him. I would say that is the best feeling of all of it. All of the cars, the house, the watch, the pool, all of that is not even close to the feeling of taking care of your family.
Because it goes beyond you, doesn't it? Like you said before, and it's
Bigger
like
than yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like a recyclable feeling of fulfillment, because it's not like you're necessarily fulfilling yourself through a material object. It's your parents, right? So the fact that you can watch over them and their safety and these kind of things, like you didn't have that before. And it's really interesting how even when you were growing up, those particular circumstances that you had coming into your life, negative ones or perceived negative, would you, if you were to look back at your younger self now, would you give your younger self, knowing you, because obviously that's you, right, similar circumstances because you know that's how you're going to grow?
Yes, I think the empathetic part of me would say, no, make it easier. But then the warrior side of what it actually takes, I wouldn't change anything. It would, if I was watching that in the most emotional times, like imagine, and I remember this like it was yesterday. It was at the bottom of the stairs. My dad, and this is the time, even after a stroke, he could walk, right? But only on a stick, like very, very slowly. So he could walk down the stairs, just like holding on to the banister very slowly. And I remember I came in, and I think I was about 11 or 12 years old at this time. So he'd had his stroke for like 5 years. And then he just sat down on the step. And sometimes he would do that anyway, because he was just tired walking down. And I looked at his face, I was like, something's not right. And then I said to my mum, she's like, oh, don't be silly, just like from a point of not wanting to worry. And I just picked up the phone straight away. Don't ask, pick up the phone, called the ambulance. No discussion, just decisive. And then he was having a stroke. And it was only a minor one. It wasn't obvious, but it could have been really bad. So it's moments like that that I can attribute back to, right, that has shaped me. So if I was to look at that and go, would I want to go through that experience? Would I put that experience on anyone? No, I wouldn't. But because I have had those experiences, I'm prepared. I'm prepared mentally to deal with the toughest situations. Otherwise, I feel for people that have never gone through any struggle or like real trauma or struggle. I don't wish that upon anyone, but you understand why it's necessary. There's a reason why when things are, think about just growing pains, right? You're literally growing and it hurts.
Yeah.
But that is how you grow. Like pain has always had a negative connotation towards things, yet pain is actually associated with so much good things and growth.
Yeah.
You never look back on tough times unless they're completely horrific, right?
Yeah.
That and think, oh, I'm glad that didn't happen, because you can find a blessing within it that does shape you in the future. Yeah. And I'm so grateful. I always think about this. I'm so grateful for my mind. Forget about finances and money and wealth and investments. I'm so grateful for my mind, because I'm happy within myself that there is not a lot of chatter, not a lot of noise, no negative self-talk. It's just very quiet and clear. And honestly, I felt peace for that.
And all the dots always connect, as you always said, right? Because if these circumstances never actually occurred, you wouldn't necessarily have the mindset, for example, to put different hats on for different people, which as someone who manages everything, it must be very difficult, right? Managing different people, different personalities, and having someone say to you, well, this has happened to me, I've lost an account, or whatever they come out with, and you realize, based on your own reality as well, that that's not actually really difficult, but in their paradigm it is.
Of course.
How do you stay sane in that process as an individual?
I understand what I signed up for. I also recognize that it's not really fair of me to expect everybody to understand that has not gone through hardship to not see something as hard, because like you said, everyone's version of difficulty and hard is different based on their environment, how they grew up, their circumstance, their beliefs. All of these things will connect to that. So I have the self-awareness to realize I give people chances. So if someone keeps repeating the same thing, then you have to be harsher with them. But I can't expect someone who's gone through no hardship to not be disappointed that they didn't pass on their funding assessment. Giving them the perspective on it and for them to not listen is then their problem at that point. So I almost really like to give someone a first chance, because it's just not right for someone to expect that that's not gone through that. However, if someone has gone through hardship and they've gone through it and I know that and they're still complaining, then you go in harder on those people because they know better. They know what hard actually is.
Yeah.
So for them to just allow their emotions to, because some people just want to vent, they just want to be emotional, they just want to lash out, and it feels good in the moment, but it's not healthy. It actually trains yourself to be weaker, because every single time that things get hard, you've now trained your mind to think, this is now a time for me to vent, this is when I should explode, which means that you're scatty, you're unreliable, probably won't make a good trader that way either. So all of these things don't actually help a trader, right? So we're in a world right now where we tell everyone to just talk about their feelings and their problems all day long, but where has that got anyone? You know, when we talk about things like a diary, it's like, oh, you should write everything that you're feeling at every moment in a diary. No, you should not. That is not help. That would be negative repetition. So if we look at things like affirmations, you would affirm good things into your life, right? We could all agree on that, because that's positive. So imagine someone who picks up a journal every day and just writes every day, my life is shit, this happened today. That's just a constant reaffirming that my life is miserable. And if you had, imagine everyone had a diary of their life, that everyone done that, and that was a common practice from, I don't know, age 10 to 20, and you could just pick 10 journals at random, and they wrote down every day how they felt about stuff. What would be the chances that you'd have a lot more negative people?
100%.
It'd be insane.
Yeah.
So if we know that's true, why would we not utilize that same concept in a positive light? But it's not taught anywhere really, which is why I love what I do, to be able to instill those beliefs into students.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Honestly, I picked up journaling for myself as well. Obviously, you mentioned it's been around before, but you've actually incorporated that into the trading space, right? Journaling, daily goals, these kind of things, because people go through periods where they don't necessarily feel like they're achieving anything, but the daily goals come to save the day all the time, right? And it's a really good metric to track, of course. And on that as well, in terms of like infrastructure and Falcon and where you started it, which is what I want to dive into a little bit with you as well. When you got to that point in your trading where you're like, right, I'm financially here, I can set myself financially, I'm good, right? When did it start to become boring, and what circumstances, there was one, made you think, right, I need to change something here? What was that?
I'll tell you where it became boring. Staring at a vending machine in a 24-hour office, staring at whether I want to put 50p in for a Kit Kat because I was so bored. That is when it got boring, seriously, because I was just on my own. I just, you know, there's no structure. I can just do whatever I want. There was almost too much freedom, which I don't necessarily think is a good thing. You need order and you need structure in your life. And I was so bored. I was like, right, I've kind of not made it now, but I've got enough where I've got a sizable account where I can do what I want. I'm on the road to being able to take care of my family now, where this becomes very, very clear. Where I would sometimes be there at literally 3 a.m. I can remember this like it was yesterday. There would be these kind of communal kitchens, and I'd just be like literally leaning against the kitchen. I'm looking at the vending machine. It's 3 a.m. I'm bored. I'm like, oh, get a chocolate bar or a packet of crisps or a can of Coke or something. Just something simple. Don't even want it. I'm just bored. And then I realised it's almost this numb feeling. So then I would get in the car, and I remember I had my Audi first. So I would just have the window down. I'd be driving home at like 3 a.m. I'd send like a message to Ib, for example, and he'd be asleep, right? And it'd be 3 a.m. and I'd just think, there's no cars on the road. I'm driving home. It's the fresh air on my face. It's cold, and I'm going home to go to sleep at like I've done some sort of night shift, and I don't even need to do that. But I was just doing that, and I realized this is not right. So then I started to connect myself with other traders, right? Only a few would be on like Skype calls and things like that. And that was only from the desire and the need to want to surround myself with other people. That was it. Because I wanted that environment, that kind of broker environment again. Where like there's accountability. If you're late, you're looked upon as not serious. That was a good thing, because that holds you as a high standard. Most people don't want to be held accountable. I love it because it brings out the best in me. So I thought, well, how can I do that? I can start like a little group and I can help them out here and there, because I understood that most people are just lost souls, don't have any direction, no vision, no clarity. And I do. It becomes very natural because of my upbringing. How could I not have vision? Right? What's my vision? And I want to take care of my family. That's enough. I don't need to question, oh, is my why this? Or I do not need to question it. I'm taking care of my family no matter what, which means I need to scale up and I need to be trading a certain amount of money until that becomes viable. Nothing else is important. And it was as simple as that. So to be able to cultivate that with like a little group, that was just the best feeling. I knew that if I asked every single one of them, oh, what goals are you focusing on this year? And they would say these blasé things.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're not serious. You've got no journal. You don't know where you're going, and you're not going to succeed. And your effort and hours in learning a strategy, yes, you might become more of a skilled trader, but there will be a block at some point. And the painful thing is you can actually make money before the block happens. So if you're switched on and you know a strategy, you could make money. You actually might make a decent amount. You might make like 10, 20 grand until a block happens, and then you're like, I can't really go any further. Something keeps happening, or I keep losing my funded account. I don't seem to be getting where I want to be. I feel like I'm technically savvy, but for some reason, I'm not making it to the big leagues. And why is that? It's because you're not serious. And I could see that very clearly. So I just started to help those people.
And do you think you would have been able to continue to go the way that you're doing on your own? Be totally honest.
No, I honestly, I don't think so. And I know that because I can just go from my previous behavior.
Yeah.
Too much freedom. Too much freedom. What purpose did I have apart from, I would have got to a decent amount, but just not as high as what I've got to. Because I've now got, I'm a person of duty. I'm a person of honor. I'm a person of, like, my word is my bond, right? I'm very old school like that. So what I needed to do is I needed to use that to my advantage. So if I know that I'm in a position where I can't let someone down, that's the best environment for me to be in. So now if I know that I am now responsible for other people's lives, for other people's goals, for their potential success in trading, that is such a powerful thing for a personality type like mine, where I'm like, right, I can't let these people down. These people are looking up to me. I can't let these people down. So then I go above and beyond, and I'm doing extra hours. I'm doing extra. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. You know, we've not spoken about the infrastructure. I doubt we'd be able to cover my whole story in this podcast alone. We probably need like part 2, 3, 4, 5. However, that's where it really comes from. It comes from, I knew what my strength would be. I perform well under pressure. I love it. I love that type of environment. It brings the best out in people. And I'll share a story why people often find, oh, why do you like helping people? The best feeling in the world is when I got my Audi, as I mentioned, and I didn't know anyone was going to do this. So I ticked off the goal. It was amazing. I went from my Nissan Micra to the Audi, and I always remember that number plate, HD53 JPY.
JPY.
So I was clearly meant to be a trader, right?
Yeah.
And all my good trades come on the yen pad, so we know that to be true. But in all seriousness, going from that was the best feeling. From the Micra to the Audi was better than McLaren, Porsche, etc. Honestly, I still think I've got the old photos of my car. That feeling was always better because that was the feeling of poor to the start of success. It wasn't crazy success, but it was like, you've done it. You've made one step out of that poverty kind of mindset, if you like I'm out of it now and I'm on my way up. And I remember when I got the car, I'd bought these Ray-Bans as a goal as well. And I hadn't worn them yet. I hadn't worn the Ray-Bans, and I had a Reese tailored suit. Hadn't worn that yet. I had new shoes, new shirt, red tie, pocket square, etc. And I remember thinking, and I had a Casio watch at the time, gold Casio. It was like £50 watch,
gold one, yeah.
right? The famous gold Casio. I've got it in one of my old journals here, and I've written it out in all detail.
Yeah.
But I saved all of that, and this actually explains why I do certain things as well. But I'd saved all of that for that day until I ticked off that goal. And when I finally ticked off that goal, I wore the suit, chucked everything on, and drove to work that day. I remember the Drake song that I was listening to, right? And I was driving, and then when I got into the car park, and bearing in mind I'm there like an hour and a half earlier, everyone in there, and there's a lot of people, like 50 odd people at the time, and they're clapping as I'm driving into the car park. Honestly, the most beautiful feeling that I can ever express, that people genuinely got there even earlier just to congratulate me. There's no gain for them whatsoever. And I thought that's the environment that everyone needs to be around, yet isn't around. Yeah. So I remember in that moment thinking, that moment will never leave me. Because it's hard to actually accept. It's like, but why? It's got nothing to do with them. How could they? Yeah, but they're not truly happy. They're just saying it. No, they were happy.
Yeah.
And do you know why? Because they were abundant thinking. Because they was achieving shit for themselves. And when you're someone who is an achiever and you're getting things done, you do feel happy for other people, right? If you're that type of personality. That's why I'm the way that I am.
Very, very interesting point, because clearly the trading industry has changed from what it used to be.
Of course.
From what you're telling me, right? Like there was a lot of a lack of enviousness back then as well. Nowadays, it's like you've got people turning their backs on everybody that they know, right? And again, the derivative factor of all this is money, right? Which is very interesting that wasn't present back then, because you said that people were winning and doing well. And of course, let's put social media aside for a second, but if we talk about a community of traders, obviously, as you said, one bad fruit infects the entire bowl, right? How have you managed that? Okay, and also, if we take an entire community and a circle as an example, because clearly traders don't need an entire community, they need a tight circle within that community to succeed based on what you said, right? So how would you vet the people in your circle? What kind of, as you mentioned, and obviously Rewired, the dream team, what particular traits would you instill into your circle, and how is that stemming off in the students as well?
I think I've done it without even trying. I've just been myself, right?
Yeah.
Because there's certain standards that I set for myself and people around me. I think that the big thing here is that I had an incredible environment, like an inner circle environment, people clapping for your success, generally want you to do well. And I realized how important that actually is, because I've been on the other side of it when you're by yourself alone. It's not fun. It's a very lonely game, especially in trading as well, where it's extremely lonely. And then you can fall into all kinds of bad habits. So you do need people to have your back. I don't care what anyone says. If you want to do this for the long game and do very well and trade high amounts of money. So I've realized, how can I create that in Falcon? Well, I'll start with the team. Right? How do we have an incredible team that has those same values, has that vision? And not everyone will. And I understood that. When I'm building a team, not everyone is going to get it. Not everyone's going to be here for the long run. It doesn't work like that. But I will filter out and find the right people that mean what they say and they want to be here for the long run. They understand the vision, they understand the project and the effect that we're trying to do in people's lives. So that I definitely wanted to start with the team first.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, because of course, like I said before in this interview as well, that it definitely has reciprocated to students. And like I said, not everyone's actually built the faculties to maintain those traits, hence why they jump from one thing to the next and so on and so forth, right? And what's your sort of like moderation factor, would you say, that you're looking to put into place, not just now and soon, but even going into the vision of the future of Falcon, to keep people as compact and tight as possible within this circle, in this ecosystem? Because they get strayed very easily. Social media is out there now. You've got next guy telling you, look, I've got this here for you, have a look at this. And then people get strayed. One, because they've picked out people in the community that might have not been there for long, and they've got, toxic mindset. That doesn't really last long, of course, right? What's your moderation factor? What's your plan for next year and to stop all this stuff?
The thing is, the best way to deal with that is just success, right? So the success that, especially with it we've seen recently, is just going up, up, up and up. And the side effect of that success has come from the work that's put in that I knew to be true. So it was the right message, and the people that listened to it have done well. I mean, I could show you a snapshot picture of people that were in Falcon, no longer in Falcon, right? And this is not to, listen, Falcon is not the only way that you can be successful. That's not what I mean. But I can paint you a night and day picture. And the reason why I'm saying this is because in the snapshot, you've got people that said to me, Mark, I'm all in. Full of shit, right? Because a week later, they're not there anymore. Like, what does that even mean? Because my word means something to me. When I say, listen, guys, I'm creating something for you in Dubai, I mean that. Everything I've said for 5.5 years, I have meant, and it's coming to fruition. So if I say I'm going to do something, it has been done, right? So you can see that with action. So that's why I take that stuff seriously. And I can show you a snapshot of people that are now funded on our fund that were in that picture.
Yeah.
They're in that picture. What's the difference? They all had the same resources. They all said the same stuff to me. It was like, Mark, I'm serious. I'm going to be here.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I'm here 2 years, 3 years. If I go through struggle, I'm going to make it happen.
Yeah.
A dangly carrot comes along. It's like, you can make more returns.
Yeah.
And they're gone. I've seen a lot of in this industry, and the best way you can do that is from people's success. So my focus is not on that. My focus is, I understand it's the industry that we're in, right? And not everyone means what they say. You also have to come to terms with that as well, which is very, very hard when that's what you resonate. So when I say something, I mean it. So I can't fathom someone not meaning it. And that's the difficult part to kind of process, if you like.
Yeah.
However, I know that the right people will listen to it, and they'll persist, and then they'll succeed, which they have done. And we've got so many more of them doing that. So moving forward, it's just going to be the acceleration of that. And I truly hope it makes a lot of people reflect on their mistakes, their journey, to realize that it's not too late. It's not too late to be in the right environment that you know that is going to set you up for life.
Yeah. And you've always said that, right? Like, of course, you can take the horse to the water, you can't make it drink. That's best advice you've given me, amongst the best anyway, because that will help you stop focusing on the wrong people. And of course, what you mentioned there, you naturally tend to gravitate towards people who are just cracking on with it, right? And you not even consciously, but you just give them more of your time, and they do well because you're investing more time into them. Not because you're belittling anybody else, but you just gravitate towards good energy. So
Of course.
well, my question to you as well is, like, you know, you don't need to do Falcon from a financial point of view. It's very clear, right? And a lot of people think otherwise, to the contrary, but your video recently explained that. But what is it that, you know, sometimes you might have thoughts come in thinking, you know what, I'm getting the mick taken out of me here, right? People have said that they're going to commit. I've committed to people, yet they've not done the same back. And you've had those feelings come in. What keeps your head in check and thinking, you know what, there's still good people out there and I'm going to crack on with it? Because there's no financial incentive to it. So there's got to be something bigger.
You just said it. The right people that are doing it. Honestly, when I do, for example, I explain it, when I have a webinar and I'll just go through the charts or whatever it is, and then someone will just talk about a breakthrough that they've happened, or I'll get a message from someone where and I realise that they've messaged me before and we've gone back and forth, and they might have come to me with a problem, and then I've given them some advice, and then they're actually the type of people to go and execute on it. So then they'll send me something 3 months later and say, I've done what you said, this is where I'm at. And I just literally, when I read those messages, I literally think, fuck yeah. Like honestly, that to me is the best feeling, is that they actually done it. Because I half expect some people to just not do it. That I might say, go read this book, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to go do this and I'm do that, and then I just don't hear from them ever again. And they've traded 4 different strategies in that time.
Yeah.
You know, so when I see people do that, it's just a reminder that a lot of people do listen.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do want it. And they will follow the advice that's there, and they will progress and they will grow. And then we get people that are successful, and it just compounds and compounds. And when I think about the bigger vision of, I always talk about visions, and I remember in this space as a whole, it's very normal for people to talk about, say the word community now, right? It's very normal for people to say, you should measure yourself quarterly. Where do you think that came from?
Yeah.
You know, they talk about all these things and they don't even know where it stems from, right? But the very thing that they would then slander, like Falcon, that they still use all the same stuff.
Yeah.
So you didn't learn it anywhere else. You learned it here, and you don't recognize it, or you don't want to recognize it because it's just so normal for you now. So there's a lot of lack of respect in this industry that will bite people later on, and has done as well. But the point I'm making is this: the easiest way for me is to just lean more into the people that want it the most. You spoke about good energies. Naturally, if someone commits, you want to commit. The way I would explain it is like this: if you walk towards me, I'll run towards you. No 50-50 bullshit. Everyone wants this fair, you know, like meet me halfway. None of that. I'll meet you 70%. I'll go further than you, because if I see you committing and you just give enough of that energy, I'll commit to you 10 times more. I do so many things that you would say, oh, that's not a good use of your time. I've sometimes spent 45 minutes just drafting out a simple message. And you would say, well, that's 45 minutes. If I was to look at what I make hourly as a whole, and I don't work hourly, but if I was to do that, I would look at that and go, that could be like literally 22 grand.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go charge someone 22 grand for 45 minutes. I care about these students, right? Because it's their life at the end of the day. They're trying their hardest to break out of their normal society. Maybe they've got, and I recognize that not everyone has good role models as well. So I genuinely feel a great responsibility and duty to help them, because I've heard so many stories where their dad might not be in their life, or their dad's literally telling them things like, "What, son, what are you playing about with this? This is nonsense. You shouldn't be doing this. Like, who do you think you are?" Like some real negative stuff. And I'm thinking, I don't know what that would be like to have. I've never had that, of course, but I can't imagine someone as someone that you look up to as an authority, as your dad, to almost belittling you, to make you feel like crap. I can only imagine how horrible that is.
Yeah.
So for me to step in and be there and say, look, no, it's all right. You're doing well. This is what you need to do. This is what you're not doing well, and this is a plan for it. And then seeing those people follow through, honestly, that's enough for me.
Would you say as well that you know, in these, especially younger guys as well, that you see an element of your younger self in them when they do similar things to what you were doing, as in cracking on with it, and that's why you feel generally more gravitated towards them? Yeah,
attitude. When I see a great attitude, it's like I respond very well to that, because I'm like, that's someone that you can always mold. You can always give them the right tools to do it. And you can trust that the things that you give them will actually come into fruition and they will act upon them.
Familiarity. And that's what's really funny to me as well, right, is that the only way this education business can work is if people win. And I think what people need to do watching this interview is use a little bit of common sense as well, that if anybody, and we've seen this recently as well, right, if your sole driving factor for education is money, which again is a different video, then obviously that sentence is not going to last very long, of course, right? But what's going to happen is your creativity is going to die, right? You've not necessarily got a bigger driving factor at play. So for you, it's like you've got everything you need. You've got these students, again, some will commit, some won't. The only way that we can necessarily as a business grow is if people win. And if it's only driven on money, then it can't last very long, which you've seen. People have quit recently on people that they've given their word to.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, you know,
it's disgusting.
It's disgusting. You've been saying in an interview the whole way through, if people have listened, in that how you do one thing is how you do everything else, right? So if you're not loyal to an external cause, you're not going to be loyal to an internal cause either. That's why these people never commit or achieve anything. So a final question for you here to close this off. How would you say, before we dive into, of course, the whole why you're still doing Falcon when you don't need to, how would you say you see the future for this entire vision? What is it to you? Like when you're on your deathbed and you've not got long left and you're looking back at your life, what would you say that you've done, and how would you look back on that?
So it's a very deep question, and it's very simple for me as well. It's knowing that if I can build strong relationships with people that become assets, right? Assets to the world, like good people that actually resonate with that energy, that then go on. Listen, one person can't do it alone. I understood that. There's only so much bandwidth, so much time that I have for myself as one person. And if I want to reach the heights that I need to reach, it's not just going to be by myself. It's going to be with a team, but a team that understand. Listen, you could have a team of 20 people, you have lazy people, or you could have a team of 5 people that get it. And they will do more than the 20 people. Just like the Belgian horses, right? For those that don't know, you take one Belgian horse, how much can they pull? Like 4,000 pounds, for example, of weight. You put another Belgian horse next to it, what can it pull? Is it 4 times 2 of 8, or is it more? It's so much more. It's like 22. So what does that show you? Then they do the study of both brothers of horses, Belgian horses. They live together, eat together, they're sleeping in the same sort of area, but they're just in the same environment together. There's been records of 54,000 pounds being pulled. So what does that show you? Environment is absolutely everything. So if I want to go far, what do I need? I need more Belgian horses. It's not just one, I need more of that Belgian horses. And imagine we've got now 10 Belgian horses pulling this mission and vision. Where are we going to go? What lives are going to change? What impact is going to happen? So that's the way that I see it. I understand that you can go so much further and impact so many more lives. I would literally sit there thinking, I tried to do it all by myself and I could have impacted another 10 million people. But I didn't from what ego? What, to just do it by myself? No, when you've done everything that you want to do and you've ticked off the goals that you want to do, of course, I still have goals. I still have financial goals. I'm still going to grow. I'm involved in loads of businesses. I invest. I'm not finished. I'm not the finished article yet. I've achieved a lot of success. However, there's much more for me to go of what I want to do. But at the same time, I want to do things much bigger. There's projects that I'm very, very passionate about. You know, helping stray dogs, for example. You know, I'm a big fan of animals. That I want to help them. I already do as well. But of course, I've got plans in a much bigger way. The actions are being put into place. Again, imagine I've got traders that are trading 7 figures and more, that are also passionate about that. Are they going to want to get involved in these projects? 100%. So for me, it's so important to know that with this mission as it grows, it's not the money, it's the impact and the people that I can connect with to be able to tap into. Imagine you got an inner circle now and we hit our first 100 7-figure traders, that we've got 100 7-figure traders, right? Which will be a complete rarity in this industry because most of these people are blowing accounts or being unfunded every 5 seconds. But so we've got that incredible stat, and our stats are phenomenal. Imagine what type of people they are at that point. Like, what person would they have had to become to be a 7-figure trader? What values have they got? Well, we all share the same principles and values, very similar. So we go above and beyond, we help. We're reliable, trustworthy, loyal, all of these things that are incredibly important. You've got now people in all parts of the world that have your back. What an amazing thing. What a rarity. That's the rarest commodity that we can ever have. That is where I'm going. Some people understand it and some people don't.
Well, the amount of friendships that have been formed just by you starting this, we were saying this in the Manchester meetup last time over dinner, that you're not even there, yet people are only here because you started this. I've got friends that I've made that I can trust with my life just in Falcon alone.
It's crazy.
That's so crazy. So when the time comes, obviously, natural order of the universe, when you do go, right, your legacy must live beyond, right? And it's each individual story that you're changing in people's lives. Like someone might be wanting to retire their mom or their dad or whatever it might be, but technically you've done that. So it's reciprocating, it's recyclable fulfillment, which you're consistently going to get. And I don't think people are after that because they've lost their bearings. So
Of course.
if we can be a diamond in the dirt, which we clearly are, it's a good way to go.
100%.
So obviously we didn't get to cover everything. I know there was a lot in here. It's the first time I'm interviewing somebody as well. But again, thank you for going in as deep as you liked. And hopefully in the future, which we are planning on, there's going to be multiple parts to this because I'm sure you can't cover 15 odd years in a simple video, right? So I'm excited for that as well. And my pleasure speaking to you as well.
Definitely. Absolute pleasure.